Listeners, we are very fortunate now to welcome Yannick Belzil, a narrative designer at Tribute Games, here with us to talk about Shredder's Revenge Dimension Shellshock DLC. Yannick, this is your second time on the show. Could not be more happy to have you. Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure, Luke. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you about Dimension Shellshock, and I want to get to some of the goodness that comes from that. But first, we last spoke a little over a year ago on the eve of release for Shredder's Revenge, and since then, the game has sold 1 million plus. It's won awards. I know I have a blast with it. What's it been like this last year to watch the journey of Shredder's Revenge since launch?
It's been really exciting and gratifying. We put our heart and soul and childhood passion into making that game, and it felt like it was received in the spirit in which it was offered. So that's really, really nice. Also, the actual success was also really nice because we got a bit more known out there. Tribute Games' his profile has raised up a bit, which is really nice. And so, yeah, and to know that people get such a big kick out of it was really gratifying as well. So and also like we just came out with a DLC and we see a lot of reaction about it. So knowing that people are still playing it, still care, that our announcements still make some sort of headlines and there's still interest for it is also quite exciting. So it's been nothing but good stuff ever since.
What's been really neat for me, as a Turtles fan, I guess you would say, has been since Shredder's Revenge. There was Cowabunga Collection, which I think a lot of Turtle fans loved, and those games complemented so well to one another. We had the new movie in Mutant Mayhem, the announcement of the TV show, now the DLC. It really feels like we're in a bit of a Turtles renaissance of sorts.
Yeah, that's. We also feel that we're lucky to ride that wave. Timing wise, I guess it might look like we set it off, but I imagine that it was just a bunch of plans that just happened to align correctly, like for the cosmos. But yeah, it's really cool. I mean, and there was still a lot of turtle stuff before us. I mean, I have not caught up with the recent issues, but I love the IDW comic. I think they are doing like an awesome version. People are really hyped about the last issue and sort of the trade paperback release of The Last Ronin, which is also like a really awesome book. Like I got to meet Kevin Eastman last summer at a convention in Montreal, so it was really gratifying to just like tell him how much of an impact he had on my life and just like. Bask in his glory. So there was always like good turtle stuff coming out, but now we're in really nice company right now, which is really cool.
It is really cool, and it's cool to me to hear you talk about, particularly as the narrative designer, the IDW comics and the Last Ronin and stuff. Because I know the Last Ronin game was just announced, and I'm on volume 3 of the IDW. It was actually Shredder's Revenge that got me kickstarted into reading the IDW comics because I'd read the Mirage collection and stuff. And so that's really neat to hear. How much would you say the kind of the external stimuli, like the IDWs or the Mirage comics or the movies, informed you as the narrative designer for Shredder's Revenge, and then I'm sure Dimension Shellshock?
They inform it a lot because one thing that we took upon ourselves on Shredder's Revenge is even though like the main focus or I guess lens of Shredder's Revenge is the 1987 cartoon, we really want to put ideas and notions and references of we want Shredder's Revenge to sort of shake hands with every other versions of the Turtles or with the wider TMNT universe and references and stuff like that. So that's why like we have a lot of palette swaps in the DLC that are like representative of previous series, of previous movies, some action figures and stuff like that. So for me, it's really, I guess, professionally, it's important to see. What are the other versions out there of the turtles and what's being made, but also I sort of want to create we want to create something that agrees with all of it, and that becomes a big tent for everyone who loves the turtles. It's a My main inspiration for that comes from the 2017 DuckTales animated series, that they did a couple of years ago. That was absolutely brilliant, but that would have references to the NES game, but also references to some read in Sweden only Donald Duck comics. Like they would have those in there, but they would also have references to classic Karl Barks, the 90s Ductile cartoon as well. So they would just try to have it all together as a nice universe of ducks, I guess. And
Mhm.
we wanted to do the same with the turtles. Like so, hopefully, we have like a bunch of different flavors that people will like.
You guys really do seem to touch on a number of different eras of TMNT fandom with Dimension Shellshock, and I know some of those palettes are coming out to everybody with the game, whether they have Shellshock or not. Uh, is that correct?
Yeah, there are 5 palettes available as a game update,
Hmm.
and there are a whole bunch more if you get the DLC. But yeah, there are a couple of them that are available if you have not taken the chance of getting the DLC yet.
Hmm. Something that was really neat for me was to see the different elements of fandom that were represented, and uh, I got a kick out of one of the first levels in Dimension Shellshock being called Mirage. Would you talk a little
Mhm.
bit about uh, the background there and creating that visual?
Yeah, well, the Mirage dimension, well, that's one of the ideas behind the survival mode and calling it Dimension Shellshock was that we can have characters skip through dimensions, and doing so, we can put a lot of references or visual ideas that our artist will enjoy, like constructing as a level and drawing stuff like that. So for the Mirage dimension, like for us, it was a no-brainer. We wanted to have a dimension that looked like an old black and white comic book, which is where the turtle comes from, and we wanted to sort of have sort of a urban street level background where you'd have like Mondo Gecko and Half Court in the background, because like we mentioned, like Mondo Gecko with a big stereo, like that feels like a late 80s 90s visual that's appropriate
Hmm.
to the time period. And we love and you know there we were thinking about, like, say, the NBA explosion of the 90s. So we'll put a half court in there, because
Hmm.
basketball courts, that feels like a New York thing as well. So
Hmm.
then there's a rooftop background that's also in black and white. That's sort of an homage to the first Turtles issue ever, where they fight and kill the Shredder at the
Yeah.
end. So we wanted to have like references to that, because we really like those. We thought it was important to really salute and embrace the origins of the Turtles.
Hmm. It felt very much like the wonderful homage, even in name, just to be Mirage and to see the backgrounds. And I got vibes of old school TMNT there, but it felt even cooler to be able to combine it with like the palette of my choice. And those palettes seem very intentional with their design. Can you talk about some of the eras of TMNT that are represented by those color schemes?
Well, yeah, for sure. To begin with, like when the first trailer dropped, we were already seeing on our Discord and on social media people already like taking the sprites and giving them different colors. Like they
Hmm.
would already say like, "Oh, this I wish they had like the specific Turtles in Time colors, or
Hmm.
whichever cartoon they would like." So we thought, oh well, that's something we should have thought of, and that we should take on board for a future DLC if we make one. And so we started working on that, and yeah, it was trying to um, emulate like the colors of different cartoons, some of the movies, some of the toy lines that felt like really important to us, and also add cool stuff. Like there's one palette where they're all green, which
Hmm.
is we internally call it liquid crystal teens. But that might remind you of a popular handheld console from the 90s. But of course, given that the game is playable on a variety of platforms, we could not
Hmm.
call it that specific palette.
Hmm.
But so yeah, we try to. again, in the spirit of wanting to represent everyone's fandom, like some of the palettes are based on a specific animated series, and some are the action figures, and some are from specific comic book storylines.
Mhm. Is it tough to? Do you have to dance around the names of those here and there, like in creating it? Like in my mind, as the amateur, I'm like, this is the 2003 series, or this is this series, that series. Do you have to dance around that?
I feel like we have to, because then the message might be, oh, let's say the 2003 turtles are in there, but they're not the 2003 turtles. They're the our version of the turtles, which are mostly
Right.
the 87 turtles, and they have a similar shading to them. I feel like if it gets out that you're saying, oh, we have the 2003 turtles, people will say, they're not my tall, angular fellows that I love from that cartoon. So I feel like that's why we sort of have to dance around like these proper terms. So we leave it up to the fans to call whichever palettes the 2003 palettes or whatever.
Gotcha. That makes so much more sense because in my mind, I was confused as to why we wouldn't. But then you would have. This is not a game about the 2003 Turtles or the,
Yeah.
uh, rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or the movie versions and such. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, because it's something I saw. Like there are palettes that reminded fans of the Rise Turtles, and some people were saying we're getting the Rise Turtles, and I'm like,
Mm,
well, that's if you think that, that's great, but that's not something we could say because they don't look like these turtles and they don't have the weapons that the Rise turtles do, or their characterization in game. Like they would be different if they were
mhm.
these characters. So that's I feel like that's why we sort of dance around these terms.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Well, palette swaps were a big thing that I was genuinely really excited for, and like I have my favorites early on, and I love the homages to the different eras. But there's so much more in the both the game update for players that don't have the DLC and the DLC itself, that just get me really excited. And when I look at Dimension Shellshock, I see even more turtles love and fandom, Easter eggs galore. Um, but before we get to Easter eggs, you guys have added new characters that we
Yes.
can play as. Fan favorites to be sure, and
Mhm.
definitely love letters to different eras of turtle fandom there.
Yeah, we were really happy about that. Like that was something that I was really looking forward to. Like if we got to do DLC, is adding new characters because I could feel like people were happy for it, were really wanted it. I feel like there's a action figure collecting connection or mentality to the game. So people they want their action figures, they want their playable characters, and one of my favorite parts of working on that game is working with the artists and figuring out how we create the characters and what attitude do we give them and what kind of moves do we give them and stuff like that. So getting to work and creating new characters is something I was really really looking forward to, and it went super great, and like we were really happy to have like Usagi and Karai in there.
So Usagi Yojimbo is a fan favorite. Fans will recognize him from his own series, but also kind of that fan crossover. Uh, how important was it to let me rephrase that question? Was Usagi one of the fan requested ones, like the most fan requested? Because I see so much popularity for him.
Yeah, he was immediately like as soon as we announced Casey Jones, because before that it was Casey Jones and Usagi. But when it was announced that Casey Jones would be unlockable with the main game, people like were like, we want Usagi," which is awesome because it's pretty funny because he's in two episodes of the '87 series,
Mm-hmm.
and he's in a bunch of episodes of further series. And in 2003 and 2012, I believe he's in a lot of episodes. But I think like a lot of people my age like first met him as a toy first in the toy line, where
Mm-hmm.
he had a different outfit. But we were like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's cool. And they're turtles. He's a rabbit. There's just something that's like elemental that fits. So yeah, a lot of people really wanted him, and we wanted him. And not long before the game came out, Stan Sakai's team reached out to us and was like, "Hey, like if this could happen, if it's possible, if this could happen, like we'd love it." And so it was like really a no-brainer for us to have Usagi in the game.
That's really cool. I didn't know they reached out to you guys.
It's well, you know what? It's extremely flattering. First, the Usagi comics made by Stan Sakai are just like classics. They're just wonderful cartooning. They're just great samurai adventure stories.
Mm-hmm.
They're just I. It was really fun for me to like jump into those to do some research to get the character right, and so to know that an artist on the level of Stan Sakai goes, "Hey, maybe let's be a part of that." Like was really exciting.
That has got to be exciting. That's so cool. That's so cool. And I feel like you guys gave quite a bit of love to the character as well, from the move sets to the art style. And he's the only character with a double jump. Is that right? In
Yeah,
the sense, yeah. Talk to me a little bit about that.
yeah. One thing that we wanted to do, especially like our game designers, like Fred, who's like our main game designer, he and also the artist, because the artists really take ownership of the game design through the movement and the animation, uh, is that they wanted to push forward sort of the fighting styles or the fighting mechanics that we had invented for the game. So one thing I would say is that each of the turtles are different, but they're really accessible. They're
Mm-hmm.
all really accessible for playing. So they wanted to push it further with the new characters. So, okay, there was a decision of making Usagi more of an aerial fighter to sort of mix it up. So, not every character is the same, and to
Mm-hmm.
push forward the type of gameplay you could have with a different character. So that was
Gotcha.
the main idea for him, and same with Karai, who has different capabilities.
Karai was such a welcome addition for me to get to see her. Didn't appear in the '87 era TMNT, but pretty well seen in the comics and in
Mhm.
other cartoon versions later on. You got to create her though for your game, which is in the spirit of the '87 style.
Yeah, that was sort of again, that's a really exciting nerdy idea for me, that we can take a character that was not that's part of the turtle canon, but it was not in the '87 series, and sort of make an '87 version of her.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really really cool for us. Like from what I gathered and researched and watched, she is part of she was in the '90s comics. Then she was in Tournament Fighter, which was also like interesting to us because she had sort of a fighting game, classic video game pedigree because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then like she's such a strong character from the 2003 animated series that for the following animated versions, there's always a Karai, and she's always sort of a twist or take on that 2003 version.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it was like, oh, well, maybe we should try to create that version, but make her '87 style, and also her look like was like she looks like a martial arts character.
Mm-hmm.
It was also like it could animate real well, which is always something that we have to take into account. Like her costume in Tournament Fighter is pretty detailed, so I don't know like if we could have done that. But so we thought, okay, the 2003 version looks cool. Maybe we can make a version of her, and give her some of her moves from Tournament Fighters, because again, that's really exciting. And so yeah, that's what we did, and it seems like I am seeing the reaction like from more than 24 hours since it came out, and people are really liking Usagi. They're really liking her, so we're pretty pleased with that.
I've been fortunate enough to play as both characters, but when I jumped online and I had at one point all 6 roster slots filled, I wasn't playing as either. But the people that I was playing with were very adept at the game,
Mhm.
and I got to see their versatility on full display. And it felt like they were quite tactical. And her ultimate is really cool.
Yeah, like that. Her Dark Thunder, which is
Mhm.
pretty badass. Like again, that's one of her classic moves. So we were really stoked to put that in the game and make it work.
Given that Karai is related to Shredder, did you guys look at the abilities of Shredder and try to kind of mimic that on the playing side?
Um, yeah, it sort of happened that way, but we really didn't have to because Shredder in the classic Konami game already does have these electrical powers,
Hmm.
and Karai in Tournament Fighter does have like the Dark Thunder electrical
That's true.
powers.
Yeah.
So it's just a happy coincidence that for us we could have those like connect in a way. Just a nice happenstance.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, new in this DLC as well is the survival mode,
Mhm.
which you guys have put kind of a unique twist on. Uh, I don't know that I would call it roguelike elements, but like you added an option at the end of every level that can augment and change the player's abilities or their playing experience. Would you talk to me about kind of making survival mode unique to your game?
Yeah, for sure. What started at first is that playing the game and seeing the fan feedback. A lot of fans they've they enjoyed the game, but they're like, I wish it was longer. I wish there was more of it. But
Hmm.
I wish it was longer. That's a compliment in a
Hmm.
sense. So we thought, okay, maybe the story mode and the arcade mode are the right length. Like you don't want to beat them up to be too long, anyways.
Hmm.
You don't want it to overstay its welcome. But we started to think about a new mode where you could have the same multiplayer beat 'em up fun, but in a way that would be concentrated and maybe even more like jump in, jump out. So
Hmm.
that's where the idea of the survival mode came true. And from then, our game designer Fred like started thinking about, okay, well, if we introduce these elements that can become strategies for the next round, that or goodies that allow you to transform, or all these different stuff, then you have something cooking right there. So that was we really wanted to recreate a different bubble for the people who want to keep playing the game, but maybe they want to sit down, play 5 or 10 minutes with friends, or they want to run through a gauntlet.
Hmm.
So that was like the main idea behind that.
The concept of kind of gathering crystals as you go through as well, I think adds kind of a neat collectible element. And in the proper arcade mode, leveling up your turtle is a big factor. Like leveling up your
Mhm.
character is a big factor. And I took a lot of joy in, working on my Splinter or working on my Casey or whatnot. I feel like you guys have added that with survival mode as well.
Yeah. Also, I think one of our desire with that mode was maybe someone like you just mentioned was not working on their Splinter. Maybe they
Hmm.
don't play with Splinter or with Casey or another character when they go on the story mode. So that way it was like, oh, people will get to play more of a different character, and maybe they're gonna discover like a wrinkle in that character that makes them play it more in the future. So it
Hmm.
was a way again to have people try to play all of it and try to come back to the game and maybe rediscover some of the characters.
You guys have added two new characters. You added multiple new levels, some from Sakai's art for Usagi with Ito. You've got the Mirage level, the 8-bit level. You didn't stop there, though. Even in addition to the palette swaps, you also gave the ability for players to try out playing as the bosses, Bebop,
Mhm.
Rocksteady, Shredder, etc. Um, that that has to be a bit of work as well to make those playable. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was also like a fan request. Like people really wanted to play as Shredder,
Hmm.
but or even Bebop and Rocksteady. But the thing is that making these character playable would require a lot of work. But also, the sprites are just too big to be in the story
Hmm.
mode. Like it wouldn't work with the way the screens are designed and the way that the whole game world is made. But
Hmm.
in a single screen area, like we can have Bebop just kick a foot soldier across the screen, and
Hmm.
that could be really fun and satisfying. So we there was a bit of work done to make them partially playable characters because there's a bunch of animations they don't really have. Like
Hmm.
they don't really have healing animations. There's a
Hmm.
bunch of these that they don't have. But we thought that it could be like a fun perk when you play the game. And also, it becomes like an interesting strategy option when you play the survival mode because if you choose a boss transformation first, it's randomized. But even then, you get like 5 or 6 HP, 5 or 6
Yes.
HP bar. So maybe you're low on energy during your run. Well, if you pick up Bebop or Rocksteady, then you have an extra 5 for a moment, and then maybe
Mhm.
you can survive another round. So again, it's something that's fun, but something that creates a sort of a challenge or an extra puzzle piece of a game mechanic.
I totally made use of that exact tactic. Low on health, jumped in. I think it was Bebop or whatnot. And I have to tell you, my wife, again, who is not a gamer, I know we talked prior to record it, she's not a gamer. When she was playing and helping me kind of test out the local co op, when she started playing as Bebop, or maybe it was Rocksteady, and hit that ultimate and just annihilated everybody, the shouts of glee were hilarious and fun.
Look, they Bebop and Rocksteady have, besides being defeated by the turtles, it feels like they have a blessed existence. They're not they're not really bothered by much in life. They just go around and throw their grenades and
Hmm.
or turn around and use their pistol. They're having a
Hmm.
good time, and it's a feeling that they can easily communicate to players when you play as them.
Hmm. So taking a step back and looking at the big picture, you have this game that launched into to subscription services. It's available in multiple places, a million plus selling, award winning. You drop Dimension Shellshock DLC for $7.99 on multiple platforms with fan favorite Easter eggs in there and characters. This is a big title. This is a big title. What's the next step? And I know that's a tough question or loaded question, but is this a take a moment and catch your breath? Are you all looking to build and head to sequel territory? Is it another project?
Right now, we don't exactly know what's going to happen. Whether it's a sequel or more DLC like that, there's nothing in the plans for that now. Like right now, we're getting like great reception. It seems like the sales are pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
but again, that's something we have to take a step back and see what comes down and talk with our partners at .mu and
Mm-hmm.
see what happens next if we do more of it. If you ask me personally, I would love to do more of it. I have a list of character I wish we could make as playables, and I could not wait to see our artists animate and create the sprite for them
Mm-hmm.
and animate the idols and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would love it, but we're a whole team. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just up to me. So we'll see what happens. As for the tribute games itself, like we're excited to see what's next project wise.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest and say that the game has made it that there's been interest, and some people knocked at our door, and they have an interest. Have an interest. So, will you do this? Will you do a Shredder's Revenge for our characters or our
Mm-hmm.
franchise? And depending on the characters or the franchise, that could be really really interesting. But that's still all up in the air. Like we'll see what happens. But I would love to do it, and I feel like a lot of us are stoked to do it. But again, we'll see what makes sense for us, like as a company,
Mm-hmm.
because we're a small studio. And one thing that I feel like we've always done is everyone in the studio like moved in the same direction at the same time because
Mm-hmm.
we're not like a super large company. So we'll see what will make sense for us next. But if it's more turtles, then it'll be more turtles. I would love it. If it's something else, hopefully it's exciting. So we'll see.
That's cool. That's something to keep an eye on for sure because I know there are. I would love to see more turtles. There are also other franchises. I'd love the Shredder's Revenge treatment. It certainly feels like you have a formula with that for sure.
Yeah, but I would say that the formula comes from sincere love. So I'm not sure that it can be replicated with everything else, though.
Fair.
Like in my own personal taste, you put any North American comic book character in front of me, like I can find that passion for it, and I have
Mhm.
it deep within my heart. Like for other franchises that a lot of people love, like maybe I don't have, or the rest of the studio doesn't have that passion. So maybe we could not recreate that, and that's something we keep in mind. Like if when stuff is suggested to us and people are approaching us with other stuff, like it has to be something that we feel really positive and passionate about, because otherwise we won't be able to reach like the standard that we created with Shredder's Revenge.
Sure. Makes good sense. We had a listener write in, Anubis, who was curious, and I feel like you might have danced into this a bit. What the most important addition to Dimension Shellshock was for you personally in this DLC, and if there was a special character addition that you would like to do, or color change option that is special to you personally.
Well, first, I want to answer with all respect to the Egyptian god of the dead. Many greetings to Anubis. Um, uh, well, really creating the new characters was really special to me, especially like figuring out like the characters and seeing like what personality we would give them, or how we express it to at first the personality has to be expressed through animation and sprite, and then we get into voice actor recording sessions where I get to write the lines and sort of direct the actors doing it, which is always a lot of fun. But also looking for cameo characters for the backgrounds. That was also a lot of fun. That's in my old nerd brain that I was itching to use again.
Mm-hmm.
In 1993, I bought like the 3 issues of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures source book. It's 3 issues. That's just characters and character profiles from the Adventures comics of the Turtles
Mm-hmm.
back then. And I could not imagine that it would serve me so well in my professional life 20, in fact 30 years later,
Mm-hmm.
but it did. So going to, oh, if we put Ninjara in the background, like that's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be really cool. Also, I knew that as soon as I'd see a Ninjara sprite, I would go, oh, Ninjara, you're great. And like, oh no, people are going to think that maybe she's unlockable and you can play as her.
Mm.
And I had to go to Discord, like, Ninjara is on the background only. You can't play her. You can't play her. But it's bringing those characters and seeing the artists making them, and then seeing people like react to them. That was a lot of fun.
I think I got such a kick out of. I'm pretty sure I saw Zach the fifth turtle in the
Yes.
background. I've not encountered him in game yet, but in seeing like coverage and footage, that made me so happy because as a kid, I was like, "Oh, I could be a turtle. I could be Zach," and that would be, that was the coolest feeling.
Yeah, we were like, oh man, we didn't find a way to put him in a base game, so we have to figure out a spot for him in the cameos for the DLC for sure.
It's cool because you have so many Easter eggs here that like I find myself googling and looking up certain things. I'm like, who is that? That's from a turtle fandom thing in this one-off random like comic element. That's so much fun.
Yeah, it's really like, well, back when I was like working on the base game, like I really went through deep dives. Like I remember finding, I remember finding a sort of infomercial video about um, public transport, either in California, either in LA or in San Francisco, that starred the Ninja Turtles. That starred like it was live action with mascots, but
Mm-hmm.
at the time it was the only piece of media where the classic animated voices reprise their roles outside of the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this weird 12-minute thing where they're like, the subway is mondo tubular, dude. And but there was a specific poster for one of the things I was like, oh, we should put that in our subway level. And turns out we didn't, because I think it's probably copyrighted or something, so we couldn't put it in there. But yeah, I love putting that type of Easter eggs and excavating visuals and ideas, because well, they're fun as nerd candy, but
Mm-hmm.
also they become um, art suggestions for the artists, and the artists either choose to put them in the backgrounds or within the game if it fits for them or if they like it. So it all starts at suggestions, and some of them make it in, some of them don't.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's so cool. Well, Yannick, I don't want to take any more of your time today, but I'm so grateful to you for one, taking the time today, and two, for the amount of love that you and your team have poured into this. Because as a Turtles fan, it's just been an absolute joy to see all of this, and I know I'm going to be in there for quite a while.
It was my pleasure to come back, Luke. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm super thrilled that people are also enjoying it as much as we seem to have enjoyed making it. Again, that's the most gratifying thing from this whole project is that our sincere feelings about the turtle are coming true. They're coming through the work, and people are enjoying it on the same wavelength. So that's really nice.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, guys. Well, that's going to be it from us. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.